All right, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to start on the middle section. In the last video, you saw me do almost all of the assembly on the front section. We've kind of come up with a plan of how we're gonna mock all these parts up. We'll get into that in more detail. I don't know if it'll be this video or the next one, but we're gonna move now to the middle section of the car. I've tried to adjust the camera, taken some of your suggestions, see if we can get it where you can a little bit better see. I apologize if my head gets cut off in any of these shots, but trying to make it a little better. Some people had commented that it was a little bit difficult for us to see. So see what I'm doing actually. So again, with the middle section, we're gonna start with some parts that are pretty obvious as far as shapes go and the rigidity. So for example, I pulled out the driver's side front door jamb, the bottom of the door jamb, and the rear side of the door jamb. I have pre-sorted the parts a little bit off camera, and I've got a few more of these jamb parts underneath the desk. So these parts, you can kind of see the profile here. Not a ton of support, but there's some pretty good shape to them. So we will start fitting these parts together and hopefully make our door jambs complete and kind of proceed up the door and around. So I have printed now every part except for trim pieces that go on the car. So it's going to be pretty neat to start seeing this thing come together. I'm going to start piecing some of these parts together and kind of see where that takes us, decide how large a piece is. Again, we need to get to the point where we can support the roof. And my intent, I did not print all of the window pieces, both the front window and the rear window. I do have the complete data for that. The driver's side doors, which I have both doors printed now, they actually don't have glass in them. I believe on the actual cars, it's just a piece of plexi or Lexan that holds that is the side driver's side and passenger side glass. So we'll probably go that same route. But we'll start getting these things glued together and see what we come up with. All right, so I've got those two pieces bonded together, and then I'm gonna go back and touch up the edges. So I think you can see in these parts, there is a gap in some of these. If you look, there's a gap in this way, and there's actually quite a few of these parts that were like this. I assume it's from the slicing process. I didn't attempt to do any sort of CAD work to try to fill in any of those gaps. It's something that we can fill in later down the road. So I really don't see it being a problem. And if it is, then we will go back and reprint anything that's necessary to reprint. In case anyone's keeping score, there's about this much glue still left in my very first bottle of glue that I've been using for all this assembly, so not really going through a huge amount of material while we're doing this. All right, so there's the first part, the front of our door jamb. So this will be the front, where the front wheel is, and then we'll continue on with our next piece. So I just make sure these things, you can see this one still has some support material on it from where I printed it. And I've just been using a knife to clean the edges up. I know we say this in every video as well, but if there's something in particular that I'm doing that you would like to see more detail on, really anything that we're working on, you know, please leave a comment and we will try to see what we can do. And after you put the glue on, you do have, I don't know, 3 to 5 seconds, 6 seconds where it's still kind of pliable and you can slide things into position. So a lot of times you'll see me spray it and then kind of put pressure on things to kind of keep them in the in a certain orientation. Then I just basically go back and try to cover probably a good 50 or 60% of the seams between the two parts. And that seems to hold the parts together pretty well. I moved around the assemblies that we were working on in the last video, and I really haven't had any issues with anything breaking or anything coming back apart. So I'm still a little, being a little gingerly with the parts as I handle them, but you can see there now we've got 4 of these parts together, a lot of the seams assembled, and everything seems to be fitting together pretty well. All right, so there's a pretty good look at the driver's side door jamb. Kind of neat to see some parts like this that are recognizable start coming together. So I will dig out the parts for the passenger side, and we will also do the passenger side part. And then we will decide kind of what to start adding on to these and go from there. So you can see this will build up the pillar all the way up to the top of the car. So pretty neat to see this part come together. All right, I gathered up our parts for the other hand, and this one again, you can see some of these parts still require some trimming. Depending on how familiar you are with the 3D printing process, if you can see, I'll try to hold this up to the camera, it looks like feet on these parts. And basically what this material is a sort of, it basically gives the edge of a part a larger footprint. So these feet are here for bed adhesion. So some of these parts I had a little bit worse time than others when it came to them staying adhered to the bed. Now, generally what will happen is a corner like this or a corner like this will just peel up a little bit. And what that is as you're building up the layers of material, that material is cooling on the bottom and shrinking, and the taller that part is, it tends to pull that foot up on that part. So you really want to make sure you have these parts down. Now, as I printed parts and really dialed in the process, the 3D printing process, I was able to get away from as much material on most of the parts. So a lot of the tall, skinny parts like this, because they're so rigid, I did only use the feet in some certain places, but there were a few of these that I did have to reprint. If it pulls up the edge a little bit, like it did on some of our front parts, I kind of let it go, but some of these more rigid parts, it just seems like it'll be a little harder to assemble them if there's significant gaps in them, and it's just things I'll have to go back and check later. All right, that's two parts together. And I think I mentioned before, you can see the numbers on the back of these. So this one actually started 69M in the front, 73, 77. You can see the trend there. And so it makes it a little easier to find the parts if you understand the numbering scheme and kind of how they're laid out in the data that I was provided. When I'm lining these up, the biggest thing I'm trying to do is make sure the A surface matches as close as possible, because that's really the top surface of the part is really what's important when it comes down to finishing and what we're ultimately going to do with this. Okay, on to the fourth part. It's interesting, you can see some of this, I would call it hair and fuzz almost in these parts. And I don't have a good explanation for it. It's obviously stringing with the printer. So one of my printers in particular, which happens to be in a different area in the printing space, will tend to do this with the same settings, the same nozzles, same material. The doors are closed. It's kind of interesting. It doesn't really seem to hurt anything, so I really haven't tried to tweak anything with it. But it is a printer that there is one particular printer that seems to do it more than the others do. Not really happy with how that was sitting, so I just pushed that joint back apart, and then we're gonna clean it out a little bit and try to re-glue that one. right, there's 4 of the 5. That one doesn't fit together the greatest. You can see a little bit of a gap here, but again, we're going to skim coat this stuff ultimately, and we'll be able to sort that out once we're doing coating and finishing before we make a mold off of these parts. Alright, so we've got that part pretty much stitched together on the outside. Now I am going to glue on the back side of it a little bit just to reinforce that joint. Alright, so that is the passenger side door jamb, and we grab the other one here. So now we've got both of our door jambs lined up here, and as I said, we've got all the parts printed now for the entire vehicle. So at this point, it's just a process of setting up, and we've come up with a plan. There's actually some files that I also purchased with this data that are more or less the inside profile. So a pretty neat process. I didn't come up with it myself, but there's a box that these cross sections of the vehicle fit on. And I believe for all the data that he sells, the box that the cross sections fit on is exactly the same. So I'm kind of working out there what we're going to do to cut those profiles. I don't know. We have a laser, a 3,000 watt laser that we may cut the parts out of stainless steel or mild steel, or I'll set up a plasma cutter, an old plasma table that we used to have with CNC software on it that we also can set up as a router. So one of the 2 directions there we're going to go. I'm not really sure exactly yet what I want to try to do. All right, so turn the camera off for a few minutes and actually had to figure out where some of these parts are. As I mentioned, there are over 100 parts for the middle section of the car, so takes a little bit of time. They are all numbered, as I've mentioned multiple times, but it takes a little time to go through and kind of sort out what parts are where, what parts go where. But I will tell you again, KitCar, the people the guy I got the files from, there are pictures for every single one of these parts. So I'll have Jack put in the video, kind of show you one of the pictures that comes with these parts. So every single part has a picture. For example, this whole side, the whole middle section of the car will be in gray. All the pieces, each part will be highlighted of where each part goes. So it's super easy to go back and go through the pictures and reference which part goes where. So for example, this part will be the next part we assemble here. And I went back and checked this one because it doesn't fit the greatest, but it's gonna have to do for now, I suppose. I guess I can always knock it off of there and paint it, or print it again. Sorry, not paint, print it again. But we're gonna stick it on here for now and kind of go from there. Okay, this is looking pretty good so far. You can really start to see the pillar area here in the front coming together. Not sure how much higher we'll actually build this up in the front. This outside piece, that is the end of it. This is where the hood actually comes down and matches up to this right here. So you can see the air vent here in between those two panels. All right, pretty good progress there. So I've also laid out the pieces for the other end here. This actually is seems pretty sound as far as picking it up, moving it around. Like I said, I've been pretty impressed with how these parts have fit together and kind of where we're headed with this. So I do have some of the parts for the back, and we'll try to close that corner up. One thing I have found useful, I know some guys have asked to mention tools, is one of these sets of nippers. These have a really long blade on them. We actually use these at our normal in our normal production for trimming gates off plastic parts. They use them for a little bit. We have them reprocessed, sharpened, and I just take some of the old ones. This plastic is so soft, it's super easy to use it, and it gives you a nice long edge to be able to have enough leverage with the long handle to be able to trim stuff up. One thing too, you want to make sure you're considering the next part that's butting up, so you don't have to try to trim a part when it's already glued. It makes it pretty difficult to trim them once they're glued together. So if you can get at it while the part is free in your hand like this, it's much easier to trim the parts up. So you want to check them against the next part in the series and make sure that they fit together okay. We are back working on our F40 project. It's been a few days. F40 video was intended to be out last week, but we are still working on it. A lot of things happening with the holidays. A lot of progress on a lot of different vehicles, some new projects that we brought in. So we're gonna get back working on our F40, get you guys an update of where we're at. And when we were last working on it in the video, it's gonna be 25 seconds ago, but it's been a few days for us. So we're still continuing on our driver's side, and we're gonna continue with the assembly of this part. I'm trying to decide how far I'm gonna go as far as assembling this whole side. I think it would be neat to get this to the point where we have the entire side center section of the vehicle here. So I think that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have to work on some sort of amount to start putting this whole thing together, which I know we keep talking about, and we have formulated a plan, and it's just gonna be a matter of starting to put that in the process. So let's get back at it. Finally went through the first bottle of glue. I'm gonna go grab another bottle and get back after it. So we've got the other parts of our pillar attached, and I'm going to turn this around for you. I mean, this is starting to really come together, look like a car, the parts of a car anyway. You can see the end here where the vent is starting to flow, and you can also see how smooth these parts are versus some of these parts look a little rougher. Again, it just goes to the orientation that these parts are in when I'm 3D printing them. So these parts are printed on the end, so the layer lines are this way. This part, because of the geometry of it, I had to print it a different direction. So you get a little bit rougher surface depending on the orientation you print in. So this is getting to be a pretty large part. I have what I think are 2 more pieces that go. This one, let me see the numbers. 10, 12, this is 8. So this actually is the next part that goes up here on this pillar. And you can see we're starting to form the door. So what I really would like to do is kind of get this whole side formed, and you'll really be able to see the thing starting to come together. So let me dig some more parts out, and then we'll get back and get this assembled. I am getting to the point where the part is tall enough. It feels stable. Like, I don't feel like it's going to break apart when I carry it, but I also would like to get it somewhere where it's supported, and you can just start to see how it comes together. So we'll start working on that. Okay, so I have collected the parts that make up the rest of the pillar. So this is the front edge. You can see the windshield here, part of the hood here. Ultimately, I believe I'm going to have to trim some of these parts off, and that's what I'm kind of deciding. Does the windshield area give me enough rigidity in the part that it makes sense to continue with it? Obviously, we won't have a windshield, a red plastic windshield in the car. We'll have to do some work. I get asked a lot of questions, and this is how the back of these parts look. So the windshield, the edge is just the edge of the part. There's no geometry to set a window in this part. So ultimately we will have to fabricate this edge. So I get a lot of questions about door hinges, the glass, those types of things. And the body is a representative of the body. it's not really ready to just be assembled and drop glass in it, for example. So I believe what my course of action will be is to trim out where the glass is. Then ultimately we have the data. Obviously, we would design a lip that goes around here to support the glass. I don't know how many of you have experience putting glass in a car, but typically you have a channel that is offset, depending on the glass, about 1/2 inch. You put a bead in there of windshield sealant, then you press the windshield in, and typically you have standoffs or something that puts that windshield in at the right place. That's how the newer cars are. Older cars, it goes inside of a gasket around a lip, but we'll probably end up doing something. I've got a company that I do some work with on the business side that I believe will be able to make windshield for me. Now, my understanding is a 308, 328 factory Ferrari windshield will actually go in this car. So, you know, that's another option. I'm probably going to try to make a polycarbonate, laminated polycarbonate windshield for it, which I said, like I said, I have a company, I have a connection that a lot of you guys wouldn't have. Something that if we're successful, I'd ask them if they're interested in doing some additional one-off parts like that. So this part is going to be the front of the pillar. Then 17 goes next. Then we have 21. And I'm going to try to set these up in a direction that that you can see. It's kind of hard for me to do it backward as well. So this part is going to go this way. Then this one is actually going to mate up with it this direction. And then 21 will go like this. 25 right here, 29 right here. Then 34 will go at the end, and 35 below that. Then that will round out the top part of our door. And at that point, we will have a complete surround on one side of the car. So kind of neat seeing that progression. Just trying to decide where to start before I make that part a little more rigid. I think I'm going to join these parts together before I put them on that. So we will glue some of these together and kind of decide from there. I might need to change up my workstation a little bit. I've got a couple of different tables that are a little bit longer. May have to put two of them together. These parts are getting wide enough and tall enough that it's difficult to slide them around and get them in position where, one, you can see what I'm doing. Hopefully it's better in this video, and then two, to support the parts. So we're gonna work on that here. So I'm just gonna score this part and see if I can't separate the windshield part from the pillar part. I don't think it's really providing me any real benefit. I don't know how much luck I'll have. The good news is if you screw one of these up, you just simply print another one. So that's the beauty of having the data and being able to 3D print these parts, is if you do screw one up, which I've screwed a few of them up in the course of messing with them, then you simply just cut another one. So I haven't tried to cut any of these. I think worst case, I'll get a body saw, which would make quick work of the plastic, but I'm kind of hoping I can score down through the outer layers and then simply break this part off. So you can see once I scored it pretty well, that worked out pretty well to score it on the line where I need to cut it at. All right, so I separated the windshield part from the other. Now, because this part has the number on this piece that I've separated, I'm going to grab a marker. I'm going to mark this part so I know what it came off of. Now, when I've separated some of these other parts, I label 1A and 1B just so I know that there were two pieces that went together and I had separated them. All right, so again, 17M, we'll call this B, and then this one we will write 17M A on it. That way we know that we separated this part. So The pillar or the windshield part of it didn't really provide any sort of value as far as structure goes for this piece. So I think removing it at this point is probably my best bet. So I'm trying to get these to fit together as well as possible, because the further you get away from that joint, for example, if I set this part down and I have a very small gap in it, it doesn't look like that big of a deal. But a small gap here, say a millimeter, when I get this far or this far away from it, becomes a pretty large error in the alignment of the parts. So, you know, they are 3D printed. They are from a scan. They're not going to be perfect, but I am trying to line them up as well as I can during this part of the process. So that you can start to see the front of our pillar there forming. And I'll put this back on the shelf with the rest of the middle parts. I think trying to keep these parts as organized as possible has been a huge help. The numbering system has definitely been key to making sure that I sort of know what goes where. Again, little piece of the windshield here, and I may go ahead and separate that piece as well. The piece of the windshield, that is. Well, I took a little lunch break, went by the marine store and picked up some fiberglass and supplies. We're going to give our fiberglass reinforcement a try at some point here. Hopefully we'll still share that in this video. But I'm going to continue with the assembly of these other parts on this door surround. Now, I would say overall, even with this amount of thin parts, the process that I've been using is pretty simple to glue these together with the kicker. And I mean, you can see, like, if I bend this specifically at the joint, I do believe I could break the parts apart still. But overall, just handling the parts and moving them around a little bit, they do seem to be, I think, relatively rigid for what we're doing.
5 minutes later.
Well, there you have it. Put enough force on it, as I mentioned, they will still break apart. So, to my point of trying to reinforce some of these, I did have a couple of these pop apart now. I will glue these back together, and then we will figure something else out. Actually broke a little spot out of this piece right here, which I should be able to just glue back in. Should be fine. One thing I'll mention is we did increase the number of printers we have from 9 to 11. I purchased another H2S and then one of the new P2Ss that they recently came out with to replace, I assume to replace the X1Cs, as the X1C is no longer available. I've been very impressed with both of them. Wanted another single nozzle printer that I could print a little bit larger parts with. Once we get into some of the door assembly, I can show you a little further, but there's parts that were theoretically sliced to fit my printers, the 256 cubed. The actual footprint of the printer is 256 cubed. The parts were sliced 230 cubed, but some of the parts, because they're at the extents of the printer, the heat bed, and I didn't measure it with a heat gun, but you can tell by the way some of the parts print, and maybe I mentioned this previously, but if you have the parts at the extent, the very edges of the bed with being thin parts, they will tend to pull up off the bed. So rather than adding more feet to the part, I actually am printing some of those parts on the H2D and the H2S that we have. So it slowed us down a little bit in that I only had, 2 of those printers versus 9 of the other ones that are larger. So a lot of the last few parts that we printed specifically for the doors actually ended up printing on the 2 larger printers. So I'm just going back and cleaning up some of the glue on some of these edges where we glued it together the first time. Well, some of my guys are working in the warehouse next door, so we keep talking about giving a shop tour at some point, but basically my shop is inside one of the commercial buildings that we own. So there is actual real business being conducted next door. We use the 20,000 square feet on that half of the building, or that two-thirds of the building, for part of my regular business, which is called Hardcoat Technology. It's a plastic injection molding company, supply automotive components. And then this side of the building is actually my shop where we keep our cars and kind of do stuff that's outside of what I would call normal business. So hopefully I could hear the fork truck moving around over there. We've got this part pretty much glued back up and together. I'm going to try to flip it over here and lay it on the table and reinforce this one last joint. And then we will, I'm going to try to put the whole door surround together, so more or less you'll be able to see the whole side of the vehicle. Pretty cool seeing this start to come together, where you can start recognizing shapes and kind of see what ultimately will come out of this one. So let me see what I can resituate, and we'll be right back. All right, I figured I would take the camera down. I switched up my workstation here a little bit. I have these 2 tables from Amazon that are, I don't know, 30 by 60, I think, 30 by 48, 30 by 60, whatever they are. And I have reoriented the parts here so you can really start to see. I'm a little concerned about attaching these together without reinforcing them somehow. So this is the back side. I thought I would show you the back side of this part. Give you a little closer look. You can see all the parts, all the numbers, where all of this stuff is glued together. Like I said, lines up pretty good. I think overall I'm really happy with how this thing is set up. And then the upper part of this same door, you can see how this will form the whole side of the vehicle. All these top parts again numbered, pieced together. I'm going to have to grab a battery for the camera, and then I will show you the other side as well. Okay, again, here's a look at the other side of the parts. You can see the top part of the door. They need to be joined together in the middle, but this gives you a good idea of the outside of the door. Obviously, these parts will join up here, and then we'll have a very large side of the car. I think the next logical step before I join these 2 parts together is to do a little experiment and join them on the back side with fiberglass. I'll put some fiberglass, mix up some resin. We'll show you that process. and then try to reinforce the backside of these parts before we try to assemble them any further. I'm a little concerned about trying to support the large assembly once it's all put together, so we will get the stuff put together to mix up some fiberglass, but overall pretty cool progress. All right, so during my lunch break I went by West Marine and I purchased some fiberglass and some resin and one of their little pump kits. So this is the resin, this is the hardener, and then I haven't used one of these little pump kits before, but it goes directly into the bottle and you can pump the resin out of it that way versus pouring it and mixing it. Normally I just mix this stuff either in a paint cup or on a scale. I thought I would try this, see how it was. I got two types of mat, heavier thick mat and then a thinner mat. This stuff was about $350 US, so not cheap. I don't know that much about fiberglass resins and the different types, but I think this is a little bit better quality than just going to Advanced Auto Parts and getting what they have. For our mold, when we make molds of these parts, I will actually contact a local friend of mine and we will make sure we use the proper materials for making a mold, and then ultimately making the parts from fiberglass, and ultimately we hope to make the final parts from carbon fiber. So pretty straightforward. You mix up the resin. I believe it said this mix is 5-to-1. We'll mix up enough and we will cut. What you want to do with fiberglass is kind of pre-cut your strips so that one, you don't want to make a mess, and two, you kind of want to have your pieces ready so when you mix up your material, you take advantage of the working time that you have. I bought their slow hardener. I don't know how long. I didn't really read to see how long this stuff takes to kick. And got a pair of shears here, and we'll cut some parts up, and then we will mix some resin up, and then I will show you as I add some parts to this. I think what I'm going to do is just put some strips along this body line and then down here, and probably I'm not going to do the entire back of the part. My purpose here is to reinforce the joints so when I pick this up it doesn't fall apart. So we're getting toward the end of the day here. I'll put some material on these and then hopefully it adheres tomorrow. I'm going to kind of take the path of least resistance first. I'm not going to worry about sanding the parts or prepping the parts. I'm just going to see if the stuff will adhere to it without me doing a bunch of sanding and prep work. And so I'm going to do the area over there. And then actually over here, I'm going to do this area inside here. And this part is pretty flexible when the weight is pushing down on it. So my goal here is to make this channel a little more rigid, kind of have it hold its position while we work on it and move it around. So hang tight and we will we'll get this thing moving. So we're going to start to cut some material up, mix some material up. Hopefully you can see this okay. I do have the pumps out, and this one fits in here. This one fits in here. You do want to wear some gloves. You might want to wear some arm protection. There's a lot of people that have issues with fiberglass, really irritating their skin. I am not one of those people. I get it on my hands. I don't want it all over my hands, as it obviously will harden up and make a mess. You'll want to have some acetone or lacquer thinner around to clean up with. And we'll cut some strips, mix some material up, kind of give you a close-up of how we're doing it when we put it on, and go from there. Also, chip brushes, these little cheapy chip brushes. I got a box of them off Amazon, 50 of them. It wasn't very expensive. You're going to end up throwing these things away. Same thing with these mixing cups. We do, you haven't seen on the channel yet, but we do some painting. We got another project we're going to be working on pretty soon, painting another race car, repairing some damage to it. But various sizes of cups, paint cups. These have the mixing ratios on them. Again, you can get this stuff very cheap. These are TCP Global brand. Get this stuff pretty cheap off Amazon. So I'll cut some samples up and we will go from there. All right, I will tell you there isn't really a right or wrong way to do this. I like to cut some pieces. Again, for this, I'm just going to put one layer on here just to see if it adheres. Normally, if you are repairing something, generally speaking, when you're repairing something with fiberglass, you are repairing a hole on the outside. When we do repairs, whether it's a bumper, fender, any part like that, you'll grind out the front of it, but you want to put some glass on the back of it so that crack doesn't propagate again. Then you fill it from the front, and the back is basically for reinforcement, so that's what we're going to do here. You can see I cut some pieces. We're going to lay these pieces on here. Basically, you'll mix up some resin. You'll see the process. We put some on the part, put this down. Then you just want to wet this fiberglass out. The stuff, you obviously have to sort of be careful with it. There's not really any chance when you're grinding it. You obviously want to wear a mask, but right now, you know, there's not going to be any fibers in the air or anything like that, so nothing really dangerous about this. I laid the fabric out over here, took my shears, cut some strips. Again, not rocket science, but I'll mix up some resin now, and then we'll show you this process. So another advantage of using the pumps that they supply or that you can purchase is the ratio. You basically do one pump to one pump. So the pump has the ratio built into it. So 5 pumps out of the resin, 5 pumps out of the hardener. In this case, I did 8. So 8 and 8. And then the resin is the proper ratio. So pretty cool. Normally you, when I do this, I end up doing it by weight on a scale. So you want to make sure this stuff is really mixed thoroughly, otherwise it will not cure properly. And it's about 65 degrees in my shop here. The hardener that I bought says it needs to be over 60. They have fast and slow. I generally get slower materials, whether I'm using paint or resin or anything along those lines, because I like to have as much working time as possible with it. So we got our parts cut here. This stuff is pretty well mixed now. I always keep some extra containers around. I try not to make a mess. These things all end up being disposable. I pretty much throw them away when I'm done with them. You definitely want to make sure you do not mix the resins, the unmixed stuff, the caps, I mean, all that kind of thing. So basically we're going to put some of this epoxy on here, and hopefully we don't have a disaster that kills the plastic parts that we molded, but we will find, or we printed. Then you simply put this on here. Hopefully you can see this well, and then you're going to take this and basically just wet this material out. So you want there to be a sufficient amount of resin, and you'll see it sort of start to turn dark. You know,
we have a general idea of what we're going to do, but other than that, they're really not planned.
You know, it loses its transparency. I just dab it in with the brush. You do want to make sure you don't have air trapped underneath it. This is really just for reinforcing this part. It's not, I wouldn't really call it structural. So you're going to want to be careful not to pull the fibers apart, but just tamping this down like this and basically dabbing it in, making sure the material, the fiberglass, is completely saturated with the resin. So pretty straightforward process. So we'll just move down to our other strips here and kind of work down through them. And you'll notice I have cardboard down on these tables because inevitably this stuff will run everywhere, and it does make a mess. So this is the lighter of the two fiberglass mats that I bought. I figured we'd start with this. The other material is much heavier, and it's random strands. It's chopped, and it is more for kind of building up layers when you want something to have a more significant thickness to it. But like I said, for here we're going to start simple and then see if we need to do anything different as we go forward with the other parts. And I've tried to sort of lay the parts in a position that it looks like their kind of natural shape is in. So as I'm reinforcing these, I'm not forcing them into a position that won't allow me to assemble them and line them up later. Like I said, just kind of laying this over the joints to reinforce these entire joints. I don't know what the working time of this resin is, but it's going on pretty far. Until you get more used to doing this, and I don't do it a lot, but you'll end up probably mixing far more than you need. All right, so that's got all of our joints covered on this part with just a single layer. Now we'll go over to our other side and put some glass on our other part as well. So I've pre-cut some larger pieces for this side. Like I said, I want a little more reinforcement over here. So we will try to lay these in. Hopefully I mixed enough material to do these with. If not, then we will mix up some more. All kind of an experiment here, so I wouldn't say I've done fiberglass, quite a bit of fiberglass work, but never for backing a 3D printed part like this. So I would say I don't know that there's necessarily a right or a wrong way to do what I'm doing here. All right, I'm going to give it just another look, a quick once over, make sure the stuff is tucked in where it needs to be. I did pretty well mixing the resin. I actually want to put a piece down here as well, so I may mix up another batch. But one thing, if you have to go back and mix additional resin, do not use the same cup, because you're going to kill your shelf life, your pot life. This material and this brush already has the two of them mixed together. How much it'll affect what you're doing, I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, but you really want to start with a fresh cup. The stuff is relatively cheap. The brushes are relatively cheap. Now, if you want to reuse your brush, you probably can. I mean, you probably can remix in one of these cups, but they kind of start to get a mess. They get a little bit of fiberglass in them, and if you continually try to keep reusing the same thing over and over and over, it just kind of makes a mess. I've been pretty careful not to get this stuff all over my hands, try not to get anything on the table, but we've got pretty good coverage all along the inside here. Over here, I'll pick the camera up and walk you around the parts, but I definitely would like to put one more piece down here on the body, or on the door frame. So I will mix up some additional resin, and we will also coat that part. This looks pretty good. Hopefully this will work fairly well. All right, I figured I'd take the camera down, walk you around in a little more detail as to what we're doing. So there's the final piece I put on. Then as we come down through here, I got a strip all the way down through here. Hopefully you can see the difference on camera. This is the piece you saw me put on down here. So there's a joint here, joint here, joint here, joint here. Those pieces about every 230 millimeters. So again, we're just trying to reinforce what we've got. I caught these joints here and here, and then also put a vertical piece here just to see, to kind of reinforce all of this up through here. Then on this part, more of the same. So a piece there. This one I did a little less coverage on. I just caught the joints. Kind of cool. You can still see the numbers, the part numbers through the material. So if this does work, I will probably do a little bit more reinforcement, but I think this will be a good test, a good start. So we will check back in the morning and make sure everything has cured up properly. See if our test was successful. So this fiberglass has cured about I guess about 10 hours, and doesn't need to cure that long, but it is completely dry. The epoxy, first time I've used this epoxy resin, and it actually looks really good. Hopefully you can see that. The shiny areas are just where it's thicker. But the stuff turned out really well. Typically the polyester resin I use is a little more yellow or brown. So picking this part up, like it seems pretty robust. I haven't tried to bend it at a joint or anything, but nothing really bled through. Everything looks pretty good. You can see where there were some gaps in the part. The resin has come through, which I obviously expected. But yeah, overall, I'm super happy with how this worked. I think it's going to be a good process for us. The joints definitely are not near as, obviously they're rigid with the fiberglass backing them now. I don't think this part, just moving it around and messing with it, is going to fall apart now, like you saw yesterday on camera. So yeah, pretty good. I'm going to take a look. We'll take a look at this other part. And this one, same kind of deal. You can see I put cardboard down. This stuff's all dry, but where it bled through the part a little bit, it did dry and pull the cardboard up. Not a big deal. A couple of these joints here. Here's another place where it did it. No big deal. We'll just knock that off there. We can knock it off there with the sander, or might even just be able to take a razor blade. But you can see some of the more sizable gaps. Some of that resin came through. Again, totally fine. You can see here where it ran through the face. No big deal. This stuff will all come off. It'll all be sanded flat, but pretty happy. I didn't reinforce the entire inside of it, but just sitting the part like this, it actually sits pretty flat. Didn't really make any video before, but the part was more kind of crushed over under its own weight, where now it's definitely sitting up a little better. So you can see how much reinforcement we did with this one on the back. The glass goes from here all the way to here. You remember yesterday? So yeah, overall it looks really good. This popped up a little bit right here. No big deal. We trim it off. It's not going to hurt anything. But I think going forward, a pretty good process for reinforcing the back of these parts so we can move them around. So the next thing I'm going to do is see what I can do to join these two parts together so we have one large part, and then probably put a little fiberglass. I've got some work to do at my house today for my wife, and we'll probably try to join these together first before I go do that, so when I come back they will be one. One more thing I mentioned yesterday, I leave the resin and the brush in the bucket in the little bottle, can't talk this morning, to kick, but you can see the stuff is rock hard. You know, you pick it up by the brush. So this is always a good indicator when you leave it out. I like to leave this stuff out and not throw it away so that I can feel it along the way and see when it starts to gel up and kick. But you can see these are completely rock hard. That is much clearer. This epoxy resin is much clearer than the stuff that I have used in the past as well. So before we do anything major, like I said, as far as making molds or anything like that, we'll do a little research and see what the proper things are. I've got a few YouTube channels that I've been looking at their mold making process, and we'll get some advice from our friend that does this all the time. So I have got the entire middle section now of this thing glued together. You see I stacked up some boxes and some containers and things to get the geometry where it lined up. It looks pretty good. I think it's going to be a bit sketchy to try to move it around and do anything with it, but I guess what I will try to do is reinforce these last joints and then see what happens when we pick it up and move it around. So it may, I may be able to do it. I may not be able to do it. I guess we will see. So I'm going to grab some gloves. Right now it is tacked together with glue. And I'm going to grab some gloves and we will mix up some fiberglass or mix up some resin like we did yesterday, and put some pieces of glass on there and then let it kick before we attempt to move it. I think trying to move it the way it is I don't think it'll work. I think it'll come apart. I don't know exactly where I'm gonna set it, but I did want to get one whole side together so you guys can see it. So on this one in particular, since we tested yesterday and can see that the process is going to work properly and it's going to adhere to the plastic, I'm going to try to wrap these last two joints. You could see on the other side, I kind of put a little bit larger piece of glass in them, and I'm trying to overlap the joints a little more now that I know that the intent of what I'm trying to do is actually going to work on this part. And there's a few different ways you can do this fiberglass and wetting out too. One of the other things I do, and it may actually be a little bit better, is you can actually get a piece of cardboard and you, instead of trying to wet this glass out on your project, you actually wet it out on the cardboard, then lay it up on here. Like I said, I don't think there's really any, for what we're doing, it's not cosmetic. I don't really think there's any really right or wrong way to do what I'm doing. You basically just want to make sure the glass is wet out, and especially where it's overlapped twice, make sure there's no air between it. I actually have one of those little rollers that can get in this crack in the edge. And as you're pushing it around, you just have to watch, because the glass will move. You know, you can slide it around as you're pushing it with the brush, but I think that's pretty good. Pretty good right there. Not sure how much more we'll try to cover in this video, but I did want to get this side done, so we'll check back in here in a little while. All right, so through this video, you've seen us get this part pretty much put together and reinforced. The front was from the last video. I thought it'd be kind of cool to lay these parts out, kind of see where we're at. These parts are very robust with the fiberglass on the back of it. So through the next video, we'll get the other side of the car done. We're gonna start on the door and also the rear section of the car. So really happy with the progress we're making here. Thanks for watching the video. We are at over 800 subscribers now. Pretty neat milestone for us. When we started the F40 project, we were at 218 subs. So we've gained almost 600 subscribers. So pretty neat. Thanks for watching. Click like and subscribe, and look for our next video. Thanks again.